The James Show Podcast.
I know this is going to be a hot story. Minutes before the deadline passed on Sunday, your governor, Greg Abbott, vetoed a bunch of legislation and signed a bunch of other legislation. And the big one that's been dominating my social media feed is he vetoed the ban on all THC. It feels weird. Consumable THC is how they keep saying it in the TV and the newspaper, and whenever you see these people giving public speeches. It's weed, okay? They want to ban weed. And we've had legal weed in some weird form, loophole-y fashion for a few years now. Anything fall apart? Anybody clamoring to make that stuff illegal again? I don't know who's asking for this. Now, Dan Patrick is asking like this is the most important issue facing your children right now. But look, I'm downtown right now. I see all these homeless people. None of them are strung out on weed. More of them are strung out on alcohol, believe it or not. I bet you do believe that. But the hyperbole around this is just a head scratcher. Like, I don't think you're crazy if you want to ban weed. I get it. You probably don't do it. You probably don't even know anyone close to you who does. You won't be affected by this whatsoever. And you think drugs are bad and you think it'll help. But Dan Patrick takes it to another level. This is your lieutenant governor.
We have no idea who's making this product. Are they terrorists? Is this a terrorist money laundering scheme?
Probably not.
In Texas? Is it a cartel money laundering scheme? You know, someone told me I better watch my step. That's what someone told me. I better watch my step. Because this whole idea by the industry again saying, well, these are mom and pop businesses. No, they're not. There may be a few. This is all orchestrated. As I said, over 3 or 4 years, 8,000 to 9,000 shops open up. They all look the same. They all have the same products. They all have the same footprint. They're all built in the same spot around schools, or most of them. No, that wasn't a coincidence, Rudy. That's organized crime behind it. Very likely.
So, let's make it illegal. Then where are you going to buy your weed from? Is everyone going to just magically stop doing weed? Or are they just going to buy illegal weed? Well, jeepers, James, where does illegal weed come from? It comes from the cartel. Yeah, so your concern, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, is that people might be supporting the cartel if they're buying legal THC products. Never mind the fact that if you ban that, then the only THC products that will be at their disposal come from the cartel. What kind of backwards sense? Like, how does he say these sentences and people don't just fall down laughing, holding their side? So, yeah, is this some kind of money laundering thing? Stop it. Stop it. I don't even know where this comes from. My best guess, and I don't know this, but when I try and find the simplest explanation in Occam's razor, I guess he's either being funded by the alcohol lobby or maybe the medical marijuana lobby or something to that effect. But none of the other arguments against it make sense. And then at that same press conference, some guy named Ali G showed up. Who's Ali G?
We all know that it's called the bionic, the bomb, the puff, the blow, the black, the herb, the sensi, the chronic, the sweet Mary Jane, ganja, spliff, reefer, the bad, the Buddha, the homegrown, the ill, the Maui, the method, pot, lethal, turbo, Thai, shake, skunk, stress, wacky, weed, blaze, the boot, dime bag, Scooby-Doo, Bob, bogey, backyard boogie. But what is the other terms for it?
So nothing makes me feel more like an outsider to the two-party system than this subject here. I mean, there's some other ones too, like no one really wants to balance the budget. No one's really anti-war. But this is one where, okay, this is the socially conservative side of the Republican Party. There's many Republicans out there. I think even a majority in some polls are okay with weed being legal in some form. In fact, I know it's a majority when it comes to medical marijuana. So it's just a minority of one of the parties that wants to ban THC so damn bad. So you'd think I would be natural allies with the other major political party, with the Democrats on this, the Republicans in our midst. But if you go to the Dallas Morning News, this isn't what I believe either. They have, from the Dallas Morning News editorial board, Texas hemp industry needs strong guardrails. What? No. No. We should have like individual freedoms and rights to make our own decisions on what we put in our bodies. But now that you heard the fringe conservative argument against this, here's the establishment liberal argument side of the THC debate. Let me read you a paragraph here. Minutes before the midnight deadline on Sunday, Governor Greg Abbott vetoed a bill and called on lawmakers to address the issue in a July special session. Initially, we argued against a ban and in favor of a strong regulatory framework. When lawmakers opted for a ban, we urged the governor not to veto the bill because a ban would have been better than leaving the market unregulated. Oh, my goodness. So instead of just making an outright ban, they want the government to have just detailed, nuanced, intimate control of who can buy what, who can make what, who can sell what, when they can sell it, where they can sell it, how strong it can be, what the price will be. They don't want to give you the power. They don't want to give the free market the power. They want to, leave this up to, the capitalism, free market, Adam Smith, invisible hand scenario. No. They want their little technocrat, pencil neck nerds in Austin to make those decisions, not individuals themselves. Well, pox on both your houses. You both got it wrong. Here's an idea. Why don't you get the hell out of the way and do what we did for all of American history until, about 80 years ago when all this war on drugs stuff started? How the founding fathers knew what drugs were. They didn't put it in the Constitution. Where do you think government has a place to regulate this? Where do you think you get the power to do this? Why should you have any say-so over whether or not someone sets a plant on fire and inhales it? I mean, I guess it stinks really bad. And if you're bothering your neighbor with the smell, okay. But gummies? And I'm trying to figure out what the heck is the rationale behind this. And I get it. You have to believe in like reefer madness. You have to, do you not know any potheads? Have you not met any potheads? Have you turned on the radio? And not this station, all the music stations. It's just a bunch of weed and cocaine singing at you. I don't know if you noticed that. Have you ever noticed like the influence of drugs on pop culture? Like just go listen to any band from the 80s and you kind of think, how much cocaine were you people doing? And so I kind of tread lightly on this topic because this is one of my goofy libertarian sensibilities where, in my opinion, all drugs should be legal. And by legal, I mean over the counter, not even prescription drugs, just everything. Just penicillin, insulin, fentanyl, weed, cocaine, Tylenol, whatever it is, whatever that garbage is for restless leg syndrome, woody pills, all of it, just over the counter. Now, I know most people don't agree with that, but in some of these polls, up to 90% of Americans agree with legal medical marijuana. So they're not like 100% against it. But where are you in this argument? Seth just sent me a message on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it. Says Dan Patrick is out of his effing mind. It's the alcohol lobby pushing for the ban. Alcohol is way worse than weed. Nobody's ever woke up in the morning and said, man, last night would have been way better if I had 10 more. I don't even smoke weed. I don't have a problem with it. That's what I'm hearing a lot of, and a lot of us are trying to figure out where is this crusade coming from, Dan Patrick? The crazy part is all but 2 Republicans in the House of Representatives, if I remember correctly, voted for the ban. So you people who are supposed to want government smaller and less powerful and individuals with more liberty, how do you explain having that position and voting for a THC ban? My mind is blown. This is Art in Wilmer. You're on WBAP. Where do you stand on this?
Has anybody read the bill?
I got to admit, I haven't read the bill.
They're not banning THC infused drinks, and Dan Patrick has a partner company with it.
Is that right? I thought all THC products would be banned under this bill.
No, there's some reason they left out infused drinks.
How would that even be written in there? And why wouldn't that be mentioned in like all these articles I'm reading about it?
Well, because from what I was told, I have my medical card for the state of Texas, and what we were told he's going after the gummies and all that stuff from the truck stuff, from the gas stations and stuff like that. But he has an infused drink company he's part of, and he's trying to push that.
Okay. That's the first I'm hearing of it. What do you think about the ban overall anyway? You think this is just about him getting some lobbyist happy?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of us are getting at. I'm not sure if that drink thing is what's doing it, but I don't read most bills. And I'm not afraid to say it, Art.
Yeah, no. My the company I go through with my medical card told me to read the bill, and I read it.
What do you take it for? What's your medical condition that requires weed?
Parkinson's.
Yikes! How long you had that?
Since 2019.
Does it really help?
Oh yeah.
Well,
helps you sleep better because it calms the tremors down.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Art and Wilmer. Good luck with all that. I hope we don't take your medicine away either way. Wes in Fort Worth, what do you think about the THC ban being vetoed?
Oh, I think it was stupid, and I'm glad it got vetoed. If they actually had any kind of support for this stuff, they would make a ballot referendum and put it out there. I guarantee you it would get blown out of the water. If they voted to legalize it, it would probably pass. So that's my thoughts on it. I just got back from Colorado, and I heard that guy talking about, everywhere you go, it smells like pot, and the kids are all, losing their mind. And I was like, I never smelled weed the whole time I was there. I don't know what the dude's talking about.
Well, everything was... The funny part is the first time I went to New York City was
New York City.
It was for work in 2006, and I remember like when you were walking down the street, every once in a while you'd have to walk through a cloud of cigarette smoke because no one could smoke inside. And I used to think, oh, that's funny, we can still smoke inside down in the South where I'm from, And now when I go to New York, every once in a while I have to walk through someone's weed cloud of smoke, and that's different. So the evolution, has been pretty stark over the last 20 years, just in my experience with New York City. Now, I have a few friends that are just like hyper successful millionaires. They own many businesses, and one of them smokes weed every single day. I mean, he's like
smoke weed every day.
He's like Willie Nelson. I bet like 23% of the molecules in his body originated in a weed plant. That's how much he smokes. So if it's so deadly and so disastrous and saps your motivation and makes you unproductive, how do you explain all these hyper successful people who are smoking weed? How do you explain Michael Phelps?
I agree.
All right. Well, not a lot to talk about when we agree. Now, let's ask the harder question that you probably don't agree with. My stance on drugs sounds fringe, but I think I'm just as moderate as hell, right in line with the founding fathers. I don't think there should be any regulations or control or restriction on drugs, not even prescription. I think it should all be over the counter. What do you say to that, Wes?
I would be okay with it because I feel like the problems that drugs present would probably work themselves out pretty quick in that scenario. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, I also I think that comes with the great side benefit of putting all the cartels out of business tomorrow. And it's not just putting the cartels out of business and like all their crime and their murder stops. They stop bribing all these officials that everywhere between here and the jungles of Colombia and Peru, where we're getting all the drugs from. All those cops are turned by drug money. They're made into something from that was honorable that becomes dishonorable. All the politicians that are bought off, all the judges. You realize all that goes away. You realize how much nicer Mexico would be if not they have to filter all of our drug money through them and all our drugs in the other direction. Wild stuff. But as it stands now, THC ban has been vetoed. Coming up next, we'll talk about if it survives the special session that was also called for by the governor. And in response to the governor vetoing the THC ban that had just passed both houses in the state legislature, it's not in the clear yet. There's a special session that has been announced by your governor, and he did this on Sunday, identifying 6 bills that state lawmakers should address. And one of them is this THC situation. So is it going to remain legal? Is it going to have some sort of significant change? Are they going to get anything done in the special session? You saw what happened 2 years ago. They had 4, 5, 6 special sessions. I think they just did it all the way to almost November or something when they finally got done, which totally defeats the purpose of the Texas legislature only meeting once every 2 years and supposedly just for this small little 5-month span here. But I'm surprised that how many people actually are starting to agree with me. I know I have a super unpopular opinion. Depending on what poll you look at, maybe 9 to 11% of people agree with me that I just think all drug prohibition is bad. Just like prohibition didn't work for alcohol, and it took a problem we had, attempted to address it by making it illegal. It didn't get rid of the problem, added a whole nother set of criminal problems on top of it. And now that we repealed it, we still have a problem with alcohol. Don't get me wrong. It didn't fix anything. I'm not promising anyone a rose garden. I'm just saying this would be better than the current drug war paradigm that's been failing for the last 50 years. 800-288-9227. I think it will survive the special session. Joe and Forney's next. Hey, Joe and Forney, you're on WBAP. Go.
Thanks, James. Enjoy your show, buddy.
Thank you.
Hey, this caller a couple of back talked about the infused drinks, which makes people, I think of things like the different points on this star. Number one, who does Dan Patrick, who contributes to his campaign? There's somebody pushing to make it illegal so that they can come back and legalize it again, I think. But they got to get rid of all the competition first.
Okay, yeah, okay. Let's answer that question because I think that's where some of our answers might lie. Again, I don't know, but a baseless speculation, this seems like the simplest one. And I land on two likelihoods. Number one is the alcohol lobby. You know, they don't want the competition for intoxicants. You know, if you want to party, we want alcohol to be the only legal answer to that. Also, could it be the medical marijuana people who, if you do need to get marijuana, stop going to these vape shops and getting this unregulated vapes or the gummies or whatever. They want all the business funneled to them through medical channels. So that's my best guess on your first question. I just didn't want to gloss over that because that really is the most important one. What was your other point?
Right. The other point is that I think that we will eventually in the state of Texas, as some of the other states, Colorado, we will see legalized marijuana, and it's curious. But you have to understand that the marijuana that you're buying in a vape store today and the gummies, that flower goes through a testing process to make sure that it meets the Farm Bill guidelines, so that it is a legal smokable weed or can be processed into a gummy. So it's not like the government's not involved in it as it is. And I believe you're right. I don't want to go so far and say we ought to be able to buy fentanyl over the counter because people are too stupid to know what a grain of that will do. But in reality, they want to say marijuana is a gateway drug to all of the others. Well, then we need to say beer is a great gateway drug to all of the whiskey that you drink. I'm on your side 100%. We need to be left alone and let us decide what we want to do.
All right. All good points, Joe and Forney. I have nothing really to add to that. Let's go to Steve in Blue Ridge. You're on WBAP, Steve.
Thanks for taking my call. Texas is a golden opportunity to do it different than all the other states. Texas needs to form a department and be in control of growing it, processing it, manufacturing it, rolling it, and retailing it. There is no private companies. There's no private individuals. If you're a grower, you work for the state of Texas.
That's terrible.
If you're a bud tender, you work for the state of Texas. That's what?
That's terrible. I mean, that's probably better than having it illegal, but now...
No, they wouldn't have to tax it. They wouldn't have to put any tax on it then, okay, because they're making billions of dollars of profit. Therefore, making it the cheapest weed in America. Every American, every pothead in America would come to Texas to buy their weed.
I bet you the cartels would get it to you cheaper.
We could get rid of our property taxes, man. We could get rid of our property taxes.
If we just tax, if we just tax weed, but let other people make weed. Look, the private sector will always do it faster, cheaper, and at a higher quality than a government entity. No, you don't think so? What example do you have? What product?
Well, there's some real good growing out here, in the wild. It's real hard to tax and regulate something you can grow on the side of the highway.
Well, you can grow tobacco on the side of the highway, but no one's doing that.
You know what I mean.
Well, no, I think that's the perfect comparison. I think
that's a lot more for weed than you can tobacco, brother. We're talking about stuff that's more valuable than gold here. Now, if you can grow it and have a place to retail it, you can make billions of dollars. If anybody gets mad at them, let them get mad at the state of Texas. Okay, who gives a damn if you get mad? What are they going to do about it?
Well,
nothing. And the state of Texas could make billions of dollars and not have to put any sales tax on it.
Yeah, okay. I have you never met a libertarian before? None of that clocks with me. If you're going to create a whole nother government department and grow government in order for us to have availability to something I think should be over the counter, that doesn't register well with me. And also the idea that we could, make so much money for the government if we just did it this way, that doesn't register with me either. I don't think our rights should be predicated on how profitable it is for the people in Austin or D.C. That's a terrible worldview. I will grant you this, Steve. it's better than what we have now, because they do the state liquor stores in Pennsylvania. And that's probably a close analog. Look into that and tell me if you still think that is better than just leaving it up to the private sector. Like all other economic solutions have been pretty well proven to operate in the most efficient way. Free market, not a government system. Did the Supreme Court just say President Trump can deport people to countries they're not even from? Susham Modi's back on, immigration expert. Welcome back to the James Show, Susham. Do I have that right, or am I misreading these articles?
Hey, thanks for having me back on the James Show. I appreciate you. No, you read it right, but it's a little bit more narrow than that. So the Supreme Court did issue a decision recently, but it was just on the injunction part. So not on the merits of whether individuals could be deported to a third country, but just while the case is being argued, like while it's being litigated, that the judge shouldn't hold the deportations. And it's also narrowed in the Supreme Court case. It dealt with somebody that had a removal order and had something called withholding of removal, or they would show it's more likely than not that they would be tortured in their home country. Like they already won that trial. And then the government changed the actual place of removal to a third country. And what the attorneys argued for the individual in deportation was, hey, we should get a notice and an ability just to even argue, right, that whether I could be tortured in a third country like Libya, for example. And that's what the judges put on hold, those deportations, and the Supreme Court lifted that hold while the rest of the case is still being argued. So not on the merits, but just on the hold of not deporting individuals to a third country when they have a removal order.
So how does that work? Do we have like a big wheel of fortune and we just spin it, and whatever country it lands on, that's where they go? You can say no. You can.
Interestingly enough, I mean, I don't know how it works. Maybe it will be like that, but I think it's agreements that probably the U.S. is making with these countries, and they're not great countries. They're to be deported to, like Libya and Sudan were some of them. And then what's really horrifying about this is the individual who had won, one of the individuals who was deported to this third country, the individual who won that case is from Guatemala. They proved to a judge he would be more likely than not tortured if he's returned to Guatemala. So I think they sent him to Libya, and then Libya sent him back to Guatemala, where he would be tortured.
Okay.
So this is really, really horrifying stuff here.
Well, one I guess area where this makes just logical sense to me is we're talking with Susham Modi, an immigration expert here, is that these people who are claiming asylum, but they don't come from an adjacent country, and the rules say if you're claiming asylum, you have to go to the first safe country and make your application there. And so for the people who are from, I don't know, like Guatemala or somewhere further away, and they're trying to get asylum here, it would make sense to say, no, you got to go back to Mexico or, the first safe country you went through and apply there. So in my mind, the guy's not a citizen of Mexico. He doesn't belong here either, but he's being sent to a third country that he's not from. And I think it's really hard to argue against that, but that's not what it's based on.
Exactly right. Well, two things. One, it's not what it's based on. I mean, these are countries they have no affiliation with, that are horrible places to be detained. I think everybody would agree, like Sudan, Libya, El Salvador are some brutal prisons. But number two, the country issue of applying for asylum with an adjacent country, it's not as simple as that. There is something called safe third country. So, for example, if somebody entered Canada first, they had to apply in Canada, like they cannot apply in the U.S., but they're very limited, like the safe third country. And then there's another rule called firm resettlement. So if you have like the equivalent of permanent residency in another country, and you can be safely relocated there, you can't get asylum in the U.S. But those are old rules. So as of like now, like even if you went into a different country first, you can still apply for asylum if you got into the U.S. But then there's more complicated rules than that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, I do like how this could work out because, you know, if you really wanted to mess with someone, send them to a country they don't want to go to, you know, like who is ultimately making the decisions? Like who said Libya is where the Guatemalan needs to go? Do we know that level of detail?
I don't know that level of detail, but I can tell you the countries that they're choosing, you know, I think they're using it as a deterrent, as a fearful deterrent that, hey, you know, you could be deported to one of these places. And it's really scary because not only what humanitarian, like what could happen to like the individual I told you about earlier, that's more likely than not going to be tortured. I mean, after a full trial, the judges found is more likely not going to be tortured in Guatemala, and those third countries are sending them back to the original country. But that's one huge humanitarian problem. But the other is if we just take like a procedural look at it, it kind of nullifies in a lot of ways the entire process, like due process, asylum, refugee law, Convention Against Torture, the right to have your hearing heard, those sorts of things, if they can just at the last minute change the country. Because remember, when the individual applied and had a trial, that they'd be more likely than not tortured in Guatemala,
right?
Government attorneys, as part of the Department of Homeland Security, issued that as the place to deport them when the judge agreed. So, you know, it's like going backwards in time with no hearing, without any notice, without any trial. And it's going to be really hard. I mean, there are arguments that lawyers can try to get in front of a federal judge to put on hold, but that's going to be really hard because the government said, hey, we could deport somebody within 15 minutes. I mean, it'd be next to impossible to put together a good legal argument in front of a federal judge in less than 15 minutes.
All right. Well, good chat. I appreciate you explaining this to us. This is immigration attorney Susha Modi. You can find his website, themodilawfirm.com, MODI. Appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you for having me.
The James Show Podcast.